What's up, everyone? Welcome into another episode of Instant Reaction presented by Sony here on the Colts Audio Network and on the Colts YouTube page. I'm JJ Stankevitz, joined every week by Colts Ring of Honor wide receiver Bill Brooks. Bill, we're in the same room today.
I know.
Unlike our usual at-home Zoom setup.
This is nice.
Post-game stuff.
This is nice.
This is very nice. We got Kevin Connors behind the camera. Thank you, Kevin, for shooting this. We were going to do this last night. We had a lot of delays getting home with the snow. Obviously, then the news that Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen will remain in their positions put out by Colts owner and CEO Jim Irsay on Sunday night. So we wanted a little bit of time to kind of digest everything, to get through locker cleanout today, which we went through this morning, and then chat about some of the things that we heard today, Bill. So we're not going to talk a ton about the Colts' 26-23 overtime win over the Jaguars. That game, while it didn't mean nothing, Bill, it's an end-of-a-season game with no playoff implications. I think it meant something. I think it clearly meant something to some of the guys on the field, for
Definitely.
Joe Flacco, for Jonathan Taylor. But ultimately, the more important stuff is what we're going to talk about right now here on this podcast.
That sounds good.
Okay, so let's start with, I want to talk about the reaction that we got in the locker room today from Shane Steichen about Jim Irsay's letter to the fans, in which he said Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen will remain in their positions, but effectively the standard needs to be higher in Indianapolis. The Colts now, right now, they have the second longest playoff drought in the AFC. The New York Jets are the only AFC team that has not made the postseason as recently as the Colts. So there's a lot of improvement that needs to happen within this organization, within this team. But I want to ask you this, because I heard this from Anthony Richardson, and I thought this was interesting, that he said, okay, we appreciate that Chris and Shane are back, and now we can kind of focus on ourselves this offseason. Having that continuity with the GM and the head coach, where there's not new expectations, there's not a new way of doing things necessarily, that doesn't mean that things will not evolve and change, and as Ballard and Steichen look at things, change some things in terms of their structure, in terms of the culture, all that. But just generally as a player, when you go into this offseason and you know, okay, hey, the coach is back, the GM's back, but we have to be better. What sort of mentality does that maybe give players going into this offseason?
Well, going into the offseason for the players, of course, they're going to have to work on getting better and improving on their skills themselves, no matter what position you play. But the thing for the players is now they understand that the expectations are a lot higher than what have happened in the past in regards to how they played and the results of the games that in which they played. So their expectations should be a lot higher coming into this next season. So with that, you have to know that, hey, look, during the offseason, we have to make sure that we are on point. We are doing the things that we need to do to get better, to help this team win, not just for me to get better as an individual, but for me to get better as an individual to help the team. And that's the most important thing. What can I do to help this team? So those expectations are understood. They know those expectations. Each and every person, player, should know what is expected of them coming into the season next year. And hopefully that will be easier since it's coming from people they know and understand in regards to Shane and Chris. So just work at it, get better, and it should be a little bit easier this offseason to go out and work to make sure you can meet the expectations the coaches and the players have of you as a teammate, as a player, but also that you guys collectively have a high expectation of going into the 2025 season.
I think I heard a lot of players today sort of echoing maybe the last paragraph of Jim Irsay's letter, which read, Bill, quote, "I know fans who want an immediate change in leadership will be disappointed. That means that we all have a lot to prove, so we'll get back to work and keep doing what we can to earn your support and make you proud to be a Colts fan." There wasn't a single player in that locker room, Bill, today who painted 2024 in a positive light. Even the guys who had individually good seasons, like Alec Pierce, Nick Cross, those guys were not willing to stand up there and, pat themselves on the back for what they did, because it happened in a season where the Colts finished under 500 and they missed a chance to be in the playoffs and to be a competitor in the playoffs because of a handful of just catastrophic plays and catastrophic games. So I think the mentality became, in that locker room, what I sensed was, if we're back next year, from individual players, if we're back next year, the sole focus is on what we can do individually and then collectively to make fans proud of this team and to accomplish the goals that we have to set out, because 2025 really, I think, is a do or die year. And I think it's a do or die year for a lot of people based on, what Mr. Irsay wrote in this letter here.
Yeah, I mean, even the players that had successful seasons this past season, they know as a team this was a disappointment, and it did not meet expectations of what they expected of themselves and what they expected of the team. So they know now that, hey, look, we have to, as you said, JJ, individually improve, and then collectively as a group, we have to improve. If we don't improve as a group, it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
We're just going to be back in the same situation we were last year, meaning if you say this in 2025, you're going to be the same situation you were in 2024. That's not acceptable. You have to prepare this offseason to expect great things from the team, great things from yourself, to help this team get to the point where you say, okay, we've met our goals. We achieved our goals. And now we're going for something that, we set a standard to, and that we are looking forward to achieving, meaning getting into the playoffs and hopefully going far in the playoffs. So the players should have that thought this offseason of getting better and getting their goals achieved so they can get into the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it goes back to, Bill, just, the individual things you do from now until April, and then growing as a team, starting with OTAs in the spring.
And to me, the biggest thing is growing as a team.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing right now, is growing as a team, as a collective group to get better.
I want to talk about some stuff we heard from Anthony Richardson today. He talked about the back. He said he's feeling a lot better. He probably is going to be close to 100% within a couple of days.
Good.
Is how he feels. So that's good. What maybe is one thing that Anthony Richardson can really focus on improving in the next couple of months, knowing that year 3 is a really critical year, not only for his career, but for this organization?
For Anthony, to me, the first thing for him is to make sure that he gets healthy as quick as possible, so that this offseason he can focus on the things he needs to do to get better, to improve as an individual, as a quarterback, as a leader of the team. And for him to go out there and work with his quarterback coach, work with the trainers to find ways to stay healthy, but also to work on his fundamentals as a quarterback, the basic fundamentals as a quarterback. I think every time you start the offseason, you go back to your fundamentals. You work on your fundamentals no matter what position you're playing. And then for Anthony specifically, personally, I think he needs to work on the short and intermediate passes. I think if he can be more consistent at those passes, the short passes, 5 yards to the running back out of the backfield, maybe the swing passes to the running back out of the backfield, the 10-yard pass to Downs or to Pittman or to Pierce or whoever it is out there, to the tight ends. Those are the things to me that are going to be important for Anthony to improve on, because those are the things that are going to help sustain drives down the field. Those are the things that are going to help to wear out defenses, hopefully. And then those are the things that eventually are going to set up the big explosive plays down the field. People start cheating up, then we know he can throw the ball down the field deep. Then you can hit those big explosive plays down the field. So for me, it's for him to work on his fundamentals, decision-making, and the short and intermediate passes.
Yeah, the Colts, another thing too, I think this is collectively between Richardson and the Colts pass catchers who will be back next year, which Michael Pittman Jr., Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, A.D. Mitchell, those guys are all under contract. You'd expect them all to be back next year. The Colts are 23rd in the NFL in drop rate at 5.1%. Now, I didn't pull up for wide receivers only, but that right there, that number has got to be better.
Yes.
That is, and that's some of that's on the quarterback, some of that's on the receivers. It's tough to isolate every single one of those and say, all right, that's his fault. But the connection's got to be better there. However it looks, whatever it looks like, that connection does need to be better in 2025.
Definitely. That's the way you're going to sustain drives. You're going to get first downs on third down. If you have a drop, you got to punt the ball to the other team. If you miss a throw a little high, a little low, a little wide, whatever it is, it's hurting the team. And this is where we talked about before. Each individual has to look at themselves and say, okay, how can I get better? If I'm a wide receiver and I'm dropping the balls, well, I have to do better at making sure I catch the balls. If it's a quarterback, I have to do a better job of putting the ball where he can catch it and hopefully make some yards after the catch. So it's an imperative that each individual looks at themselves in the mirror this offseason and figure out ways they can get better. But all that's going to hopefully help the team get better if they complete more passes, move the ball down the field, and score touchdowns. Sustaining drives. That's the bottom line. I mean, and we've talked about time of possession before throughout this year, where at the beginning of the year, Colts did not do a good job of maintaining the ball, time of possession, and that's part of it. That wasn't the whole story. That was just one part of it that, you need to make sure you sustain drives, and you do that by getting first downs.
One other thing with Anthony Richardson, he was asked today if he would welcome or how he would view competition. And, I think kind of the baseline here, the reason why the question was asked is he completed 47.7% of his passes this year. And, the Colts did go 6-5 in his 11 starts, but that completion percentage, kind of the things you're talking about, Bill, with the low, the misses on those short and intermediate things that don't allow you to sustain drives, I think that's why you would start thinking about, okay, do the Colts need to bring in competition for Anthony Richardson? And what he said was, quote, "I'm a natural competitor. I've been competing all my life. I love competing. So if the team feels like that's the right direction we want to go in, I'm all for competing." And he also said, if they don't, essentially, it's not going to change my mindset. I think this is a really mature answer from Anthony Richardson, kind of acknowledging that, he said, I can't really control everything that comes with the NFL, but I know what I can control, and I'm going to do my part to be the best version of myself for the organization. I think right there, that was the right mindset for him to take, the right things for him to say in that moment. And I think it's very much genuine. Like, he's going to operate this offseason like someone's gunning for his job, whether that person is on the roster or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think, he's a competitor. As he said, he's been competing his whole life. And competing against someone else is not a big thing to him. And most competitors, it's not a big thing to them. They just go out and compete. But to me, a lot of it also goes back, if you're an athlete out there and you're a competitor, to me, your biggest competitor is yourself.
Yeah.
You're competing against yourself. You want to get better. You want to improve. So there might be things out there that might look, hey, this guy did a great job on this. But what? I could do a little bit better at doing something else to make that play a lot easier for me. So you compete against yourself. So when you have someone else out there competing, okay, yeah, I'm competing against them, but I want to make sure I am the best person that I can be for this team. And so I'm competing against myself to be better. And as long as he has a high standard for himself as far as competing against himself, then competition with someone else will be a lot easier.
Yeah.
And that's what you want. That's what you want to face. And as an athlete, you want that. You want to compete. That's the fun of playing a sport, because you're competing. You're competing against yourself and competing against another person.
All right, before we continue here, a quick word from our friends at Sony. Bill, I travel a lot during the season, and I couldn't live without the Sony 1000 XM5 noise-canceling headphones. Whether I'm listening to music on the plane or trying to listen back to interviews I conduct in the post-game locker room, the premium noise cancellation these headphones provide keeps me in the zone whether I'm relaxing or working. And when I'm at home, these are great for just hearing you, Bill, when we do our podcast at home, and for keeping me locked in or just hanging around the house. Take it from me, these are my favorite headphones I've ever owned. The Sony 1000 XM5 headphones are the official headphones of the Indianapolis Colts. All right, Bill, I want to talk about two guys who we learned something about with their injuries today. Two guys who played in 16 games, 16 out of 17 games, but dealt with stuff pretty much all year. Let's start with Michael Pittman Jr., who said he had a fracture in his back that he thinks he sustained during a joint practice in August.
Wow.
And he played in 16 of the Colts' 17 games this year. He missed one game due to the back injury. He finished the season with 111 targets, 69 receptions, 808 yards. He only had 3 touchdowns, but those numbers they're definitely lower than we're accustomed to from Michael Pittman Jr. But when you factor in the back injury, and like we all saw him against Tennessee,
Yeah.
he was moving a little gingerly in that game, to say the least. For him to do what he did this year, so much respect for Michael Pittman Jr. He just got a contract extension. He could have said, packing it in this year. I'm gonna take care of this back thing.
Heal up my back, yep.
See you in 2025. He didn't do that. He played in 16 games, Bill. The level of toughness that tells you right there, and to still put up the numbers he did. Michael Pittman Jr. is a remarkable football player, a guy who I think is an absolute pillar in that locker room, a guy who is a great example for anyone on that team, just a guy who I hold in such high regard, again, knowing what he was dealing with quite literally all season long.
To me, that's unbelievable for an individual at a wide receiver position to go out there and to have a fracture in his back and go out there and play and not just go out there and run and play and stop and pivot and cut and jump to catch the ball and do all those things. To me, that in itself is very difficult with the injury that he had. And then to go out there and not only do that, but to get hit play after play, to go out and block out there at the wide receiver position, that is a lot of strain on your back as it is. And then to have the injury to the back and for him to continue to play and not just go out there and play maybe one game or two games, but to play 16 games throughout a season, that says a lot about Pitt, his toughness, how he cares about the team, that he wants to go out there and give everything he has to the team to help the team win. He wanted to do whatever he could to be a part of the team and just make sure he is out there helping the team and helping the young guys as well as the offense. So give Pitt a lot of credit. I mean, I don't know how he did it as far as week in and week out, because I don't know if I could have done that, going out there and playing with a back injury, because a back is so important to what you do out there in the football field.
I want to say this before anyone gets the wrong idea about Michael Pittman's back versus Anthony Richardson's back. Not every back injury is the same. They are not all created equal. And some positions you can't play through it, and some maybe you can.
Exactly.
So I wanted to get that out there, Bill, because I know some people might be watching this or listening to it and being like, well, if Pitt's a great example for the whole team, why didn't AR play through it? Like, it's not your body.
Right.
It's not your body.
Everyone's different, and just for Pitt, for him to go out there and do that, this says a lot about him and his toughness and his commitment to this organization.
Yeah, and again, I think the numbers that you'll see out of Michael Pittman Jr. in 2025, are going to look a lot more like the Michael Pittman Jr. that we have seen over the years. I don't think this year is indicative at all of where Michael Pittman Jr.'s career is going. One other guy to mention here, Julian Blackman tore his labrum in week 1 in his shoulder. He missed week 2, and then he came back and he played the rest of the season. And, he told me, I was talking to him about it today on Monday, and he told me, he kind of had to be cognizant of it almost at all times. He's making sure that he was kind of protecting that rotator cuff. And he said kind of everything he did was a challenge this year. He said picking up his own daughter was difficult. And, that right there, I think, is a reminder that these guys are human.
Yes.
There aren't many, jobs out there that, something happens in your job and all of a sudden you can't pick up your kid. So definitely something to keep in mind, a little perspective there. But I thought he also said, look, it's not an excuse. If he's out there, the expectation is that he's going to make plays. And I think you look at the season he had in totality, he still had, what did he have, 80-something tackles?
3 interceptions,
I think. 3 interceptions. He still was making plays out there, but I think it wasn't maybe to the level that we were used to from Julian. But again, there's some context there. There's the context of the guy's shoulder hurt the entire year a torn labrum. I'm like, you get that in baseball, your season's over. And in football, you play 16 games.
Exactly.
So a lot of respect for Julian Blackman for playing through the whole thing and for it being meaningful for him to still get back out there and play instead of saying, I'm going to pack it in and get surgery or whatever.
Yeah, guys go out there sacrificing their bodies for the betterment of the team, to go out there to play and do the best they can, and give Julian credit for going out there playing as many games as he did with that injury. It's not an injury that, is something that, to me, as far as a play as a wide receiver, I don't know if I could have played with that, and especially as a defensive back tackling people out there. That says a lot about Julian.
And he didn't miss any practice either. That was the other thing. He taking all his reps in practice and fighting through it, not just on Sundays, but during the week too.
That says a lot. That's an example for younger guys to say, hey, look, you know what? This is the sacrifices you might have to make for the team, for the betterment of the team. And Julian made those sacrifices. He sacrificed, his pain and going out there playing. And he could have been another one that said, you know what? I'm going to rest this shoulder. I'm not going to do anything to cause further damage to my shoulder. I'm just going to rest it until it gets better, then I'll get back on the field. But no, he went out there and played and gave it his all for his teammates, because he cared about his teammates and he cared about the team. So he wanted to go out there and produce, and give him a lot of credit for doing that as well. Both he and Pitt for going out there. And there's a lot of other guys, not just those two guys, of course. A lot of other guys played with injuries. But just as we're talking about those two individuals, a lot of credit to those individuals for going out there and making that sacrifice.
And, I'm sure there are other guys who played through a lot this year.
Exactly.
Those are just two that we kind of learned about today in the locker room. But, it is a reminder that, hey, the season didn't go the way that anyone wanted it to, but this is still important to a lot of people on this football team.
Yeah,
and
it was.
I think, Bill, the kind of thing that I also took away from the locker room is like, okay, like I've been in locker rooms before for locker cleanout day. You've obviously been in it as a player, and you're trying to manage the, processing the season. It's right after it ends, so maybe you haven't totally got there yet. But every year that you don't make the playoffs or you don't accomplish a goal that you set out for the team, there is that sour taste in your mouth. Yeah. How do you kind of process that as the offseason goes, and then ultimately turn that into, all right, we know where we need to get better based on the failures we had the year prior? Like, how does that just sort of follow you through the 6 months of an offseason before you get to training camp again?
It's not a good feeling. It's one of those things you kind of remember the hurt that you have, especially right after the season's over, in regards that you didn't achieve your goals as a team. You're not going to the playoffs, you're cleaning out your locker, you're not going to be around the guys anymore, and we fell short of our goals, and it's not a good feeling. And you want to hopefully get away for a little while, process that, and just remember that feeling. It's not a good feeling. It's a hurtful feeling, and you just got to remind yourself, I do not want to feel like this again. And in order to do that, you got to say, okay, what am I going to do, or what can I do this offseason so I can help this team to be in position to be playing in the playoffs the next season? And whatever that may be for you as an individual, depending on what position you play and the things you need to improve on or things you need to work on, you go do those things. And you also keep in the back of your mind that feeling you had of not making it to the playoffs. And you keep that feeling in the back of your mind, and then once you get back with the guys and back with the team again, and in OTAs and minicamp and things like that, and back to training camp, then you put all the work that you did during the offseason, you go out there and hopefully improve during training camp, but you always remember that feeling that, hey, you know what, that was not a good feeling, and we don't want to feel this way again.
Yeah.
We want to hopefully accomplish our goals and get into the playoffs and reach those goals and have a good, successful 2025 season, and do our best, and hopefully, we can do that and fulfill our goals.
Yeah, it's the Colts have been in this place quite a bit over the last couple of years of how do we use this as fuel and figuring it out. And, look, Shane Steichen said today there are going to be some tough conversations that go on this offseason. Some hard decisions are going to have to be made,
And that's what you have to do when you have not succeeded in a number of years, you haven't reached your goals, there are going to have to be some hard decisions. There are going to have to be some tough decisions made. And a lot of people aren't going to like them, but you have to make those tough decisions if you want the team to get to the goals that have set for itself, especially in this National Football League where it's tough. It's tough to win football games in this league, and it's tough to get in the playoffs. And, this team has seen that lately, that haven't gotten to the playoffs, where before, back when Peyton Manning was here, it was one of those things that was almost like clockwork. It's almost a given that you're going to make the playoffs, and right now it hasn't been that way lately, but hopefully things will change, and the guys have to take it upon themselves to make sure that it does change and go out there and do the best they can.
One other quick note here. Shane Steichen told us on Monday he has not made any decisions about staff changes yet. Mm-hmm. So we'll see in the coming days if there are any. What they are, we'll have you totally covered on Colts.com, on the Colts Audio Network as well, if any of those things do happen. All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of Instant Reaction presented by Sony. Before we go, one more quick word from our friends at Sony. This NFL season, feel every play, every hit, every moment with the Sony 1000 XM5 noise-canceling headphones, the official headphones of the Indianapolis Colts. With premium noise cancellation, you're in the zone. No distractions, just pure football. Whether you're in your living room or on the go, you'll never miss a beat with Sony headphones. For Bill Brooks, I'm JJ Stankevitz. By the way, guys, this is going to become our sort of emergency podcast in the offseason. We're going to keep Instant Reaction going all through the offseason. Whenever the time calls for it, it'll be myself, it'll be Bill, maybe it'll be someone else in this chair, someone else on that couch. But the podcast will continue into the offseason. We haven't done that before, but excited to react to what is sure to be an offseason in which there's going to be stuff to talk about, as there is with every NFL offseason. For Bill Brooks, I'm JJ Stankevitz. Thanks for watching this episode of Instant Reaction. Talk to you some other time soon.